On this video here today, I'm going to be reacting for all the Premier League teams on where they finished at the end of the season on this video. And this is a special video, as we all know, as I'm going to be reacting of all the Premier League teams on where they finished at the end of the season when I predicted them at the start of the season, and I want to know whereabouts I got right or wrong out of the teams from 20th place up to first of the table, and which positions I've got right for the teams who actually finished in that exact position where I predicted it before the season begun. So let's start off the video right now at the bottom of the league. I'm going to work my way up down there, all the way up to the top to react to who finished in what position and where did I place them before the season begun. In 20th place, I predicted at the start of the season was AFC Bournemouth last in the Premier League. Well, I was wrong on that by at least 5 places because they finished 15th in this campaign. And I've got to say, at the start of the season, they had a very poor start to the season. And I actually felt that they're going to be going down anyways because the squad of players they've had, I don't think they had a strong squad. I felt in at the time that they're going to stay in the Premier League in this campaign, but I was proven wrong. And Bournemouth stayed up. And they came 15th, they did this season. And obviously they had a change of managerial at the start of the season. Only 3 games in, and Scotty Parker was sacked as manager for Bournemouth after being thrashed 9-0 at Anfield. And then Gary O'Neill took over as caretaker boss for like 2 months or 3 months. And then he took over the permanent role after the results were very, very good. And then they gave him the permanent role instead of being the caretaker. And he actually done incredibly well for Bournemouth, a little club like Bournemouth, to actually stay in the Premier League. And you know they've got a smallest budget in the Premier League they've got, and for them to stay in the Premiership was absolutely breathtaking in a way. I never expected that to happen, but a small budget, the manager's inexperienced to keep this team in the Premier League in this campaign is absolutely marvellous. And they came 15th this season. They did 5 places up when I predicted them, as I predicted them last. But they came 15th in the Premier League season. In 19th place, I predicted at the start of the season was Fulham. Well, Fulham had a very good season. I was proven wrong by a mile because every year that Fulham get into the Premier League, they go straight back down like a yo-yo club. It's always been a jigsaw between Norwich go up one season and Fulham go down the other. But that all finished off, it did, in this campaign because Fulham were absolutely miles away from that. And they were absolutely fantastic throughout this whole campaign. You know, they got 2 signings, ex-Arsenal players who joined Fulham, and that was Bert Leno and also Willian as well. And I thought, you know, buying those players and also buying extra players in the summer transfer window, I just thought Fulham might go down. I just felt like in that first spell and the second spell when they were in the Premier League and they brought loads of signings, I thought they're going straight back down because, you know, that money they got in from being promoted again, you know, spending that money because they're a Premier League team, I thought that was going to really cost Fulham. But I was proven wrong, and they did got a good draw at the start of the season to Liverpool at Craven Cottage. They even beat Chelsea 2-1 at Craven Cottage also, and got a huge win out of a few other teams in the Premier League to get enough points to stay in this great division of the Premier League. And I was 9 places I was off from where they finished this season, as they came 10th in the Premier League, but in my predictions they came 19th, so I was 9 places off, unfortunately. And there you go on that. In 18th position, I predicted at the start of the season was Southampton. Well, I was right on Southampton to get relegated actually, but I didn't expect them to be the worst as I predicted them at the start of the season. You know, they came last, they came this season. They had 3 managerial changes during this campaign. You know, they had Ralph Hassan, who was sacked after losing 4-1 to Newcastle at St Mary's. They brought in Nathan Jones from Luton to come manage Southampton. That was very, very awful. I think that managerial appointments, getting Nathan Jones, pretty much cost Southampton their Premier League place. And then he was sacked in February, and then Ruben Sayers was the caretaker until the end of the season. But it wasn't enough results they've had throughout this campaign. You know, Southampton did actually, the only good result they had throughout this whole campaign, in my opinion, is drawing 3-3 to Arsenal to try and stop our title hopes against Man City. That's the only thing that Southampton did throughout this whole campaign. But the other times how actually poor they've been. They only beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge 1-0 for James Ward-Prowse free kick, but all the other games were poor for Southampton, and it's been 11-year spell in the Premier League came to an end, and they unfortunately came last. But I predict them to finish 18th, so I was actually 2 places down to exactly where they finished this season in the Premier League. So there you go for Southampton. In 17th position, I predict the exact position I predicted at the start of the season. I've got this one right. Everton in 17th position. I've got this exactly right, in my opinion. I thought Everton's going to struggle at the start of my Premier League predictions. I just felt that, Everton's hierarchy, the investment they're not putting into the club, they've been flirting around relegation last season, not spent enough money in the summer transfer window under Frank Lampard at the time, and they've been cost them a lot of results as well at the start of the season. Being around that relegation fight, flirting around that position, and I did actually predict them to finish 17th in the Premier League, and I actually got that one exactly right, where they currently finish at this Premier League campaign in real life, and they got a result in the last game of the season against Bournemouth by a goal from Doucouré to keep themselves alive in another spell in the Premier League for a 70th year in their club's history, and in a way for Everton to actually survive the skin of their teeth once again, and even did that in my predictions. I've got that spot on, and I'm right on that one. And that's Everton for you in 17th position, where I predicted them and when they finish exactly in this campaign. In 16th position, I predicted the start of the season was Brentford. Well, I was miles away from that, because Brentford came 9th in the Premier League. I was only 7 places behind where they exactly finished in this campaign. Brentford had a very good season, I've got to say. They were only a couple points off of the European place. They could have qualified for the Conference League, but it wasn't to be, and Villa got that place in 7th position in the Premier League. But I've got to say for Brentford, however, they got 2 wins over Man City, home and away. The only team who's done that this whole campaign. No Premier League team who actually went home and away and beat Man City this season, a team who won the league. And that's congratulations to them as well, a small club like Brentford, who are very smart in terms of recruiting players overseas and that. And I thought in their second season, in my opinion at the time, I just thought Brentford might even struggle, in my opinion, because in their first spell, a lot of new teams who get promoted to the Premier League will, get something out of the first season. In the second season, they probably have a second season syndrome, but it wasn't to be for Brentford. They proven me wrong on that, and they almost got into the European places, but they missed out on that, and they came 9th in the Premier League. But in my predictions, I put them in 16th position, so 7 places I was behind where they are currently finished in this Premier League season. So there you go for Brentford. In 15th position, I predicted the start of the season was Leeds United. Well, Leeds had a very, very, very poor season, Leeds. I just think Leeds had a stronger team. The players they've signed in the summer transfer window when Jesse Marsch was in charge, they brought in a lot of American players over from Salzburg, a player from Leipzig, that Red Bull connection, go to Leeds in the Premier League, and I thought they might have got a fighting chance on surviving in the Premier League, but it wasn't to be, because obviously Jesse Marsch was sacked in February, and they replaced him for the former Watford manager, Javier Garcia. He's only had picked up 3 wins for Leeds, and he was sacked because they hadn't had enough points at the time to get away from the relegation zone. And they had Fat Sam, or Sam Allardyce, you want to call him, for 4 games, and he couldn't manage to keep them in the league. He only got a draw out of Newcastle, and the other 3, they lost all 3 of them, and in a way. And Leeds, came 19th in the Premier League, and I was only -4 on that because they came 15th in my Premier League predictions, and they came 19th in the in real life, in reality. And unfortunately, Leeds will have to play in the Championship football and rebuild themselves to get themselves back into the promised land once again. And very disappointing for Leeds, and I really feel sorry for them in a way, for a big club like them to drop down to the Championship once again, unfortunately. And that is that for Leeds United in my prediction. In 14th position, I predicted the start of the season to now was Crystal Palace. Well, Crystal Palace, however, had a very good start to the season. Did very well in the opening game of the season. They lost 2-0 to Arsenal, but they have picked up some couple of good results from August all the way to December, to Christmas. And then, results started to fall apart under Patrick Vieira. And then 4 months without no result. And then, however, Patrick Vieira was sacked on St Patrick's Day. And then Roy Hodgson, the ex-Crystal Palace manager, took over his job for only a temporary job to the end of the season. And he kept them up to 11th position. Only 3 places plus for them in my Premier League predictions when I predicted at the start of the season. Well, Palace, not had good results. And then Patrick Vieira left. Roy Hodgson took over. They beat Leicester City in his opening game in charge of manager. Even famously beat Leeds at Ellen Road by 5-1. And they had some few good results against the other teams around that relegational fight. And then they get themselves away from that. And they came 11th in the table. Even the finish above Chelsea they did. And that's really a good achievement under Roy Hodgson. And also for Crystal Palace to have another spell in the top flight ever since they were promoted in 2013. And obviously they might be losing Wilfried Zaha in the summer transfer window to Saudi Arabia. But instead, they really worked as a proper team they did at the end of the season. And they got them a few results under Roy Hodgson. Got them swept away from the relegation pyramid. And they got themselves in a healthy 11th position in the table. And I was only, +3 ahead from where I predicted at the start of the season for Crystal Palace. In 13th position, I predicted at the start of the season to now is Brighton Hove Albion. What a remarkable achievement that Brighton Hove Albion have actually done this campaign. Okay, they've lost their manager at the start of the season, Graham Potter. He only managed 5 games into this new campaign, and then he left the job because he wanted to join Chelsea because of the money, and that didn't really last long there, he didn't. And then Roberto De Zerbi took over the job as Brighton Hove Albion manager. He got his first result, a draw away from home to Liverpool, 3-3. And Brighton Hove Albion carried on adapting to change after when Potter left the job in September, just a month into the season. And they carried on that momentum. They carried on, pushing themselves and punching above their weight. They got themselves into the semi-finals of the FA Cup and lost to Man United on penalties. And Brighton had a very good season despite on what happened at the start of the season, and they carried on adapting very quickly. And you've got to be like that in the Premier League to adapt quite quickly, because if you don't, you're going to be found out and you're going to struggle. But Brighton Hove Albion did the complete opposite to that, and they came 6th, and I was +7 on my predictions, 7 places above where I predicted them at the start of the season. From 6th, they currently ended the season off, and in my prediction, I put them in 13th position to start the season. But I was only 7 positions off from Brighton when they exactly finished. And that is that for Brighton. The team that I put in 12th position at the start of my Premier League predictions at the start of the season was West Ham United. Well, West Ham had a bit of a 50-50 season they've had this campaign. Well, West Ham United, however, congratulations to them. Clap them because they won the Conference League final against Fiorentina. And they had a very good European season they've had. But in the Premier League, however, not a very good season in the Premier League. They came 14th, and I was only -2 from West Ham United, where they exactly finished this season, where I predicted them in 12th position. But you've got to say, David Moyes, however, you've got to give him credit. He is a very defensive manager. He's not a manager who'll probably go for the attack or, go and get the team to score loads and loads of goals. A very good team who are very smart on where they want to be in the pitch defensively, when to find the ball, when to pass the ball, when to score goals in the game. And they've done that throughout the whole campaign. Even in European football, they were very, very careful on that as well, on how can they beat the opposition. They did that very well on that. But in the Premier League, they were very, very poor. At one point, I thought that West Ham might be relegated, in my opinion, around January time. But they carried on getting some couple results around April. Beat Fulham away from home at Craven Cottage. They got a result there. They got maybe a couple results after that as well. And that kept their Premier League status alive. And for another season for West Ham United, as they currently, this season, finished 14th. And I put them in 12th, but I was only 2 places behind where they exactly finished for West Ham. In the 11th position, I predicted at the start of the season to now was Wolverhampton Wanderers. Well, Wolves had a very, a bit of a battle throughout the whole season, fighting for their lives in the relegation battle. They lost to Bruno Lage at the start of the season, as he was sacked in the end of September. And then the caretaker boss took over the job. not picking up any much results. Only beat Southampton, they actually did. That's the only team that I remember that Wolves beat before Julian Lopetegui took over the job. But really, in a way, Wolves weren't very good at the start of the season in Part 1 of the Premier League. But then, when the World Cup tournament began, they bring in a former manager from Sevilla who won them the Europa League in 2020 in the pandemic, and that was Julian Lopetegui. And he took over the job in the new year, in January, and he really gave the team a bit of confidence in themselves. And he's got a pedigree, you know. He's won the Europa League for Sevilla, and of course he's going to probably put a stamp into the Wolves team, and he did that quite remarkably well. I think probably injuries didn't really help them as much throughout the whole season, but they managed to survive in 13th place, and I've got to say they can probably want to kick on from that a lot better next season, because Julian Lopetegui is the manager. He probably wants to see this team probably get European football, because he's done it in clubs he's been at, and that could be the season for them for next season. But 13th position was the position they currently finished this season, but where I predicted them, I put them in 11th position, so I was only like 2 positions behind where they exactly finished in this whole campaign. The team that I predicted the 10th position at the start of the season, and I'm reacting to them now where they exactly finished, was Aston Villa. I put in 10th position at the start of the season. Well, Aston Villa had a very poor start to the season under Stevie Gerrard, and he was sacked in October after losing to Fulham. And then he was sacked as manager, and then a lot of the Villa fans were over the moon, they were, because they got themselves a European pedigree manager coming into Villa Park, and that was Unai Emery, the former Arsenal manager and obviously Sevilla manager, former Sevilla manager, and also Villarreal coach, came in to take over Villa's Aston Villa to a team who was 16th position when he first took him over, to a team from 16th up to 7th in the league, and they're guaranteeing themselves a Europa Conference League place for next season, European football. And I know Unai Emery really loves European football in that competitions. He likes winning those competitions. He's a pedigree man. He didn't do it with Arsenal though, but he knows how to win or get themselves a team like Villa to probably progress all the way up to the final and potentially maybe win it next season. But where I put them at the start of the season, I put them in 10th position. So it was only like at least 3 positions behind where they exactly finished in 7th position. But, you know, Villa had a very good season, I've got to say, after when they had a very poor start under Stevie Gerrard for Aston Villa, and they came 7th in the Premier League this season. The team where I predicted at the start of the season was Nottingham Forest in 9th place, and I was miles behind where they exactly finished in 16th place. They did survive though, and that's a bonus under Steve Cooper. We'll get back to that in a minute. But the reason why I put Nottingham Forest in 9th position at the start of the season is because I just think they might even kick on very well. I think a lot of clubs in the Premier League probably will not know how Nottingham Forest play their football, but I was completely wrong to put them in 9th position in the Premier League. I was a bit too over the top, I think I was, for Forest, but however, they came 16th in the Premier League. I was only -7. It was on my positions where I put them, -7 on this reaction, and they came 16th in the Premier League. And we all thought that Steve Cooper was quite loyal, he had, by the board, who actually backed him as manager for Forest, because a lot of clubs around that positions in the relegation zone sacked their managers, but they kept loyal to Steve Cooper, and that reward, keeping him throughout the whole season, is as a place for another season in the Premier League. And they've done that exactly remarkably well. Even though they've signed so many players in the transfer window, like 40 players have signed, they kept themselves up still. And I've got to say, absolutely fantastic football club Forest, and I'm so happy for them to have another season in the top flight of English football next season. Maybe a bit over the top of my prediction at the start of the season, but at least they survived, and they came 16th in this whole Premier League campaign. In 8th position, I predicted at the start of the season to now was Newcastle United. It was actually 4 places ahead on where I predicted at the start of the season, because Newcastle came 4th in the Premier League. They got themselves a Champions League position for the first time in 20 years. A club like Newcastle has been through a lot, you know, the last 20 years. The club has been relegated twice under Mike Ashley, and then he sold the club in 2021 in the last season, and then Eddie Howe was manager. The Saudi Arabians came in. He came in as a manager for the club, got up to 11th position at the first season under Eddie Howe as manager, and then the second season they got one step better and came 4th position in the Premier League. lots of draws have had throughout the whole campaign, and lots of wins as well, and less defeats for the first time for a long time. And Newcastle will be playing Champions League football, and it's going to be massive for Newcastle. You know, a club like them should deserve to be a big team because they've got the stadium, they've got the facilities to be a big club. The only problem is probably the city is probably a bit too small for probably players to be attracted to Newcastle. But Champions League money will probably make them buy more good players in for next season in the summer transfer window. I can't wait for that. But Newcastle, however, got themselves a European place, Champions League football guaranteed. I was only +4 on the positions because I put them in 8th at the start of the season. They came 4th in the Premier League in real life, and unfortunately it wasn't to be for my prediction for Newcastle. So yeah, they came 4th in the Premiership, and my prediction, I put them in 8th, so I was wrong on that. In 7th position, I predicted the start of the season to now was absolutely downfall, this one. Leicester City. Well, Leicester will be playing their football in the Championship for the first time since 9 years after being promoted in 2014. They remarkably won the Premier League in 2016-2015 season, and then 7 years later, they'll be playing themselves in the Championship. How could they? A club like Leicester, they've got the best training facilities in the whole country, the best facilities of training facilities they've had. But let's talk about this season before we get to the positionings and that. You know, I think the reason why I think Leicester City did struggle this season because the goalkeeper Schmeichel left in the summer transfer window. I feel that not replacing the players who left Leicester really cost them throughout the whole campaign. All right, they kept Maddison, they kept Tielemans, who could have gone to Arsenal, and they also kept a few other players like Harvey Barnes as well as a Leicester City forward. But again, they haven't replaced the players who left, like Kasper Schmeichel. I thought he was a leader, he was, for Leicester. But losing a goalkeeper like him and replacing him with Everson in goal, I think that's a downgrade for Leicester. And that put themselves, unfortunately, in troubled positions. And that's why Brendan Rodgers was sacked in April. And I think maybe the board should have sacked him a little bit earlier than they did sack him in April. Because I think April's more of the business that you got to get results by before the end of the season. But unfortunately, they didn't do that, and they failed to do that, the board, I think, and wonder why they got themselves a place in the Championship next season for Leicester. Never expected Leicester to actually get themselves relegated. I never thought Leicester would get relegated this season. I thought Leicester probably finished like 7th or maybe top 10, but 18th place, really? Well, that's a difficult one for them, and unfortunately, I think they'll bounce back, Leicester. I think next season they'll be back in the Premier League. I think the squad, the money they've got, the facilities in the stadium, the training ground as well. There should be a Premier League club, really, so I hope they go straight back up next season. They've got the parachute payments, though, so I think that will exactly happen for Leicester. But yeah, not good for Leicester this season, and they came 18th. In 6th place that I predicted at the start of the season to now was Manchester United. Well, Man United came 3rd, only +3 ahead on what I predicted them at the start of the season. Well, Erik Ten Hag was manager for Man U at the start of the campaign. Obviously, Ralf Rangnick left. New rebuild at Man United. You know, they had a bit of issues. The press with Ronaldo as well about him. You know, don't want to play for the team. They're playing Europa League football. I deserve a lot better than that. You know, he says that the manager doesn't respect him and whatnot. And then Erik Ten Hag moved him on in November time, and he went to Al Nassr after that. But however, Man United, had a very good season, you know. They really handled the pressure quite well, I think, Erik Ten Hag, in terms of the Ronaldo's saga, and, you know, with the issues they've had with the injuries they've had in the players as well, like Rashford as well. They kept on being themselves, and they won themselves a League Cup trophy against Newcastle in February. And they got themselves a trophy for the first time in, 5 or 6 years, or 2017, the last time they won a cup trophy, when they won the Europa League that season, and the Carabao Cup, and obviously 4 or 5 years later, they won themselves a trophy again. I think Erik Ten Hag's really bringing a fortress at Old Trafford, and I feel there's still a lot of rebuilds, I think, for Man United after, this season. Okay, they got themselves into the FA Cup final, lost to Man City. They are probably got the qualities to try and be a better team, in my opinion. I think Erik Ten Hag's a very good coach. He knows how to make players play good in a way, or getting the younger players like Garnacho, for example, a young player coming through the system for Man United, bringing him into the first teams. Really big for him, a career like him, to believe in him, to put him into the first team. Absolutely remarkable to have Garnacho be a part of Man United team, and Anthony as well. They brought him from Ajax, his former club as well. and he's really trying to get that culture of Man United, a young squad, young players. Man United are really made to make younger players and make them very good, like what back in the days in the 92, the class of 92 they had. And I think Ten Hag trying to bring that back for Man United, of course, in the future. And they did come third in the Premier League, and I was actually wrong on that in my prediction at the start of the season. I just thought that might be a bit too premature to get themselves in the Champions League place straight away under Erik Ten Hag. But I was wrong on that, and they came third position, and they won themselves a League Cup, and they have that for Man United. In fifth position, I predicted at the start of the season to now was Chelsea Football Club. Well, Chelsea, where do I start from Chelsea this season? Not a good season. I feel Chelsea, they sacked Thomas Tuchel at the start of the season. He had brought a couple of good results, I think he did. Not much results. I know he lost to Dynamo Zagreb in the Champions League, and a day later, before the Queen died, Thomas Tuchel was sacked, and then Graham Potter took over the job for 7 months, and they were very poor. I think the whole club was absolutely poor, top to bottom, in my opinion. I think, Todd Boehly, I don't think he has a clue about football at all. I think he was too involved as much, I think, for the Chelsea team. I feel that he not allowed the managers to have their own input in the players, in the dressing room, the whole team itself, and probably that's really cost Chelsea this whole campaign. You know, Todd Boehly spent the money in January, brought in Enzo Fernandez for 110 million, one of the richest transfers in transfer history of football. But again, it's not still good enough still in a way for Chelsea. You cannot spend money and expect the team to be so good. You can't do that. It's like having a Ferrari. You buy a Ferrari, but you've got to make sure the Ferrari is very, very good. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be, and that Ferrari was absolutely crap. And that's how Chelsea's season, I describe it, this whole campaign. They came 12th this season, 12th position, and they had 3 managers throughout the whole campaign. I think they had 4 actually. Brighton Hove Albion ex-captain was the caretaker for 1 game. But again, absolutely joke of a club, Chelsea, throughout the whole campaign. Not giving managers a chance again with this new owner. I know Roman Ivanovic was in charge. I think he allowed the board to do the dealings in football, while he's like the guy who spends the money into the club. But Todd Boehly, in my opinion, was probably too involved, and that's probably why Chelsea struggled throughout the whole campaign. They've got a new manager in charge now. They've got Mauricio Pochettino, and let's see what he can bring to the Chelsea team, what he can implement in the Chelsea team. And I think they've probably got more. I think they've learned their lesson a little bit, because I have heard a lot of talks that Chelsea have got like a sporting director, a new sporting director in their team. So let's hope that Chelsea bounce back next season. In 4th position, I predicted at the start of the season was my boys Arsenal. Well, Arsenal, however, had a very good season. I did not expect Arsenal to come second or compete with Man City head to head. I know Man City are probably more of a better squad compared to us, because they've got more players in their squad compared to Arsenal's team. We've got more of a smaller squad compared to Man City. So I expected Arsenal not to win the league anyways. But, however, we really, really rebuild ourselves under Mikel Arteta. Look how far we came from when Arteta took over the job in 2019. Not had a very good 2 seasons as manager for Arsenal. Had a very good year last season. Might have missed out on Champions League football, but I thought Arteta would not slide very easy on that, and he really wants Arsenal in the Champions League, and that's why I put them in 4th position, not second, but 4th position. But to push themselves up to second was absolutely remarkable. What a team we had. We had Saliba as a Rolls Royce in defence. We had 2 signings from Man City, Jesus and also Zinchenko. What good 2 players have had. We had the signings we had after selling Lacazette and selling a few other players in the summer transfer window, and replacing them with very good players and or top quality, if you want to call it that way. And I think Arteta really got the team very spot on throughout the whole campaign. We had some very good results throughout the whole campaign. Beating Spurs at White Hart Lane was fantastic for the first time since 2014. We went to White Hart Lane and beat them over there. We got ourselves great results throughout till February, and then we did fall off a little bit after losing to Everton and Man City at home. And then we came back into winning ways again from February all the way to April. And then we started to drop points to West Ham. We could have got 3 points out there. We could have got something out of Liverpool, because we were 2-0 up we were in those 2 matches. But then they came back and made it 2-2. And I think that probably might have cost us, this that Premier League trophy. And also as well, losing to Man City at the end of April was very, very tough. But I think Man City got a very good team compared to us. And we all know that, because the squad they've got. But however, if we can really rebuild on that from next season, try and get more players into our squad in the summer transfer window, we've got maybe a chance maybe to compete head to head with Man City. I think we did very well so far still. Don't get me wrong, we've done well, incredibly well, to try and compete with Man City. But Man City's got like extra legs compared to us. And yeah, but we came second in this Premier League campaign. And I put them in 4th position at the start of the season. So yeah, I did well, in my opinion, on how I expected Arsenal to be. In 3rd position of the Premier League that I predicted at the start of the season to now was Tottenham Hotspur. I don't know not why I put Spurs above us in my predictions at the start of the season. But look, it really paid off well for us compared to what Spurs had this season. Spurs had a very, well, for the first time in 6 years, it's St Tottenham's Day. St Tottenham's Day for all the Spurs fans who watch this, because for the first time since then, we're above you in the league. Ha ha ha. But look, jokes aside, well, Spurs, however, under Antonio Conte, you know, they had a very good start to the season. They were actually top of the league at one point, and they were around 3rd and 4th position throughout the whole campaign. And then the wheels started to fall off around March when Antonio Conte slagged off the whole Spurs team in the press conference, and that really cost his job. But even before that, losing the FA Cup to Sheffield and having some odd results against the other teams really cost Antonio Conte his job, and then he was sacked. And then his number 2 was manager for a couple of games, and he was sacked because he's not good enough for the job as well after losing to Newcastle 6-1. And then Ryan Mason, the 3rd man for this spell in this campaign for Tottenham, he took over the job. Not much from him. Failed to get into Europe. They got themselves in 8th position. From 3rd position I predicted them, to have them to come down to 8th is a reality check for Spurs. A team who gets they get too stuck up against us all the time, every single season. But finally, that is karma right there, that is. And Spurs came 8th this season. In 2nd position, I predicted at the start of the season, was Liverpool. Well, Liverpool, I think their squad's aging a little bit, in my honest opinion. Obviously, Virgil van Dijk's 31. You've got Jordan Henderson's like 32. You've got, Mo Salah's now 30 or 31. And most of the Liverpool players are aging a little bit. I don't think Jurgen Klopp adapted to that team. And I think that really cost Liverpool their spot in the Champions League for another season. They came 5th. They missed out on that. They got a big rebuild. They've got to have a rebuild now to this new season. I know Roberto Firmino's leaving. Naby Keita's leaving Liverpool. Oxlade-Chamberlain's leaving Liverpool as well. So they've got some few, and also James Milner as well is also leaving Liverpool. So they are now realised a little bit. Jurgen Klopp's probably realised now that we had a very poor season. We missed out on the Champions League. We've got players at aging, and now we probably need to restart our team again, like a reset button. And that's what they've got to do for next season in a way, if they want to bounce themselves into that top 4 position. I've got potential that Jurgen Klopp's still a good manager, still, even this is an error of a season they've had. But I think that Klopp now needs to rectify now on the mistakes he's made by the players he's kept on a little bit longer. And they've got players that are a bit older now, and I think they need to move on. And now he's got chance now in the summer to buy the younger players come through and see if they can be the next Mo Salah or Firmino or Van Dijk or whatever, and let's see if that can work out for Liverpool for next season. But yeah, I thought maybe at the start of the season Liverpool may have still a strong enough squad to try and still come 2nd position. They got a very good home record though. They only lost 1 game this season at home to Leeds. Lost Leeds 2-1. And every other game since, they got the draws the majority of the season at home, but only lost 1 game at home this season. So their home form's quite good, but away from home they were awful and had a few defeats against Wolves, for example. Losing to them was massive as well. That's the game that I remembered them losing by. Losing to Man United at the start of the season as well. Losing to us as well. 3-2 at the Emirates as well was not very, very good for Liverpool. Drawing 0-0 twice to Chelsea is not very, very good as well. And they've got to really reset themselves for next season. So yeah, they came 5th this season. And there you go for Liverpool. In first, the team that I predicted at the start of the season to now is Manchester City. And I've got that team spot on the green. I've got 2 teams right in this campaign. I've got Man City in 1st position. I've got Everton in 17th place in the Premier League that I got exactly right on the dot when I've done the predictions at the start of the season to now. And I've got to say, Man City's team has been having a terrific season. They won the treble. They won the treble. They won the FA Cup. They won the Champions League against Inter Milan. They even beat Arsenal to the Premier League title as well. And I've got to say, Pep Guardiola's team, they are so unpredictable. They are strong, they're solid, they're tough to beat. You know, Erling Haaland, for example, a guy that I said at the start of the season to now will be the top goal scorer in our Premier League campaign. And guess what? He's the top goal scorer in our Premier League season this season. He scored so many goals this season. He's helped out the whole Man City team, like everyone across the pitch. They work as a team together. They really gel together. They work together as a team. They compete for one another. They help one another as well. And wonder why they got themselves another Premier League title under their name this season. Last season's predictions I reacted to, I've got Man City right in that one as well. But this season, again, I've got Man City right in the exact same position in first place. Well, Pep Guardiola is a coach that's only missed out in his, 3 seasons in his managerial career to miss out on the league title. And I've got to say again, Man City are one of the strongest teams in Europe as well. No one can stop Man City. No one cannot stop them. And, you know, with the whole squad, they're going to carry on building, I reckon, for another couple of years. They've got to have someone like Newcastle, or maybe Arsenal, or Man United, got to push them off their perch and get someone else to be Premier League champions instead of Man City. Because every year now, we keep on having Man City. And I'll probably get a little bit bored of it, but however, Man City spent the money mostly compared to all the other teams in the Premier League through the years, and they came first, and they won themselves another trophy under their name. And that's all we have time for here today on this video of my Premier League reactions of the 2020 and 23 season. And if you like this video, please leave a like. If you want more of this content, please subscribe. And that's all I've got to say right there on this video. And I hope you enjoyed my Premier League reactions on this video, and I'll be doing my Premier League predictions of the 2023 and 2024 season in a couple of months from now, before the season begins. But until then, for myself today on the TGI Gamer channel, peace out.